once told me accusingly. But the dark has advantages of its own, especially if you are a teenager dating somebody you can't be seen with. When adults go to bed, sometimes as early as 7 p.m. in winter, it is easy enough to slip out of the house. The darkness confers measures of privacy and freedom as hard to come by in North Korea as electricity. Wrapped in a magic cloak of invisibility, you can do what you like without worrying about the prying eyes of parents, neighbors, or secret police. I met many North Koreans who told me how much they learned to love the darkness, but it was the story of one teenage girl and her boyfriend that impressed me most. She was 12 years old when she met a young man 3 years older from a neighboring town. Her family was low-ranking in the Byzantine system of social controls in place in North Korea. To be seen in public together would damage the boy's career prospects as well as her reputation as a virtuous young woman, so their dates consisted entirely of long walks in the dark. There was nothing else to do anyway. By the time they started dating in earnest in the early 1990s, none of the restaurants or cinemas were operating because of the lack of power. They would meet after dinner. The girl had instructed her boyfriend not to knock on the front door and risk questions from her older sister's younger brother or the nosy neighbors. They lived squeezed together in a long, narrow building behind which was a common outhouse shared by a dozen families. The houses were set off from the street by a white wall just above eye level in height. The boy found a spot behind the wall where nobody would notice him as the light seeped out of the day. The clatter of the neighbors washing the dishes or using the toilet masked the sound of his footsteps. He would wait hours for her, maybe 2 or 3. It didn't matter. The cadence of life is slower in North Korea. Nobody owned a watch. The girl would emerge just as soon as she could extricate herself from the family. Stepping outside, she would peer into the darkness, unable to see him at first, but sensing with certainty his presence. She wouldn't bother with makeup. No one needs it in the dark. Sometimes she just wore her school uniform, a royal blue skirt cut modestly below the knees, a white blouse and red bow tie, all of it made from a crinkly synthetic material. She was young enough not to fret about her appearance. At first, they would walk in silence, then their voices would gradually rise to whispers and then to normal conversational levels as they left the village and relaxed into the night. They maintained an arm's-length distance from each other until they were sure they wouldn't be spotted. Just outside the town, the road headed into a thicket of trees to the grounds of a hot spring resort. It was once a resort of some renown. Its 130-degree waters used to draw busloads of Chinese tourists in search of cures for arthritis and diabetes, but by now it rarely operated. The entrance featured a rectangular reflecting pond rimmed by a stone wall. The paths cutting through the grounds were lined with pine trees, Japanese maples, and the girls' favorites, the ginkgo trees that in autumn shed delicate mustard-yellow leaves in the shape of perfect oriental fans. On the surrounding hills, the trees had been decimated by people foraging for firewood, but the trees at the hot springs were so beautiful that the locals respected them and left them alone. Otherwise, the grounds were poorly maintained. The trees were untrimmed, stone benches cracked, paving stones missing like rotten teeth. By the mid-1990s, nearly everything in North Korea was worn out, broken, malfunctioning. The country had seen better days, but the imperfections were not so glaring at night. The hot springs pool, murky and choked with weeds, was luminous with the reflection of the sky above. The night sky in North Korea is a sight to behold. It might be the most brilliant in Northeast Asia.